Let me continue recording. Sorry for that. So I hope it will be stable now. But it's almost done, so don't worry. So virtues are means between extremes. So we have the good we're trying to be, and then we have the constraints. Of course, our bad habits, the things that we desire to do, but we want to move away from them. This one is not so important, but so why does desire and judgment agree? What does it agree for virtue? So virtue is about choices and actions. There's a good choice and there's a bad choice. As you want to pick up a habit, there is a conflict of interest there. There is something you desire to do, but there's also a good habit that you wish to pick up. So those extremes that we see, so a virtue is something that we continuously do until we pick up the good habit. So it is in choosing to do what is right constantly that helps to build that good habit. Yeah, choosing to do that thing that is right constantly. In excellence, for example, in intellectual, someone to become excellent at mathematics, that they continuously practice, they continuously pick up, they continuously study and practice and learn and so on and so forth. That in itself, first of all, it is somebody choosing, let's say, to avoid laziness. Yeah, they would rather be in bed, you'd rather be watching TV or doing something else, but you say, let me give up this or something that is of pleasure and do what is good, which may not be of pleasure, until I pick up the virtuous habit. So what does it take to be fully virtuous? So you first of all need to start with the practical wisdom, possess that ability to reason, yeah, to reason and say, to say that I need to understand, I need to possess something, and then it also comes with experience with life, yeah. So experience with life means that I have seen this thing that is not good, and I want to pick up what is good. So experience with life comes in. So virtuous, someone to be is mindful of the consequences of that negative thing. If I am a coward, what is the result of my cowardice? And then I need to pick up courage. Yeah, I need to be courageous in my actions, in my decision making. There's also the desire to mimic. You've seen a virtuous person. These are things I had mentioned earlier, that you recognize somebody else who is virtuous. So for example, in education, when you notice somebody who is in education or somebody within your profession who has attained excellence, yeah, and you wish to pick up this habit or to be like that person. So what are the commonly ascribed advantages of virtue? So it focuses on the development of habits. So promoting human excellence, yeah, that we see a human being excelling at something, either intellectually or morally. It focuses on an account in which the virtuous means recognizes the rational, or rather you focus on your rational behavior and how you need to make changes to it. You look at the personal life of your personal life and the dimensions of your personal life in relation to society, either at individual level or at social level. The fact that it focuses on reasonable actions, not just abstract ideas, but rationally, what actions can I take on myself as an individual? We also have the criticisms to virtue ethics, of the theory of virtue, of the ethical theory of virtue. we have, the people are different. Yeah, people are different, and what I may consider good, another person considers bad. There are people who intentionally pursue what is bad. I'll give you an example of, they call him the philosopher of common sense. He's called, I forget his name. What is his name? Let me just quickly Google his name. While I tell the story, a story he gave. This gentleman used to write essays on virtue. And he said, he told a story of that when he was in school. Let me see if I can see his name. No, it's not that one. No. I forget his name, which was at the tip of my tongue. If I remember it, I'll give it to you. But this gentleman tells a story that when he was in school, and he began to seek virtue, basically began to seek virtue and orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is doing what is right. And he had a classmate who asked him, but why are you so intent on seeking on orthodoxy and doing what is right and virtue and so on and so forth? And he gave his reasonings, like for all of us. And then this gentleman told him that, no, for me, actually, my goal in life is to do whatever I feel I want to do. And later on, he actually said, this man died. He died in a sense. He committed suicide, and it was by choice. And he committed suicide basically he was in an act of doing whatever he felt like. You know, a person who decides, I'm going to take as much alcohol as I want, as much legal drugs as I want. And in that process, he died in basically that process. So in other words, what this particular situation points out that people are different. Yeah. And societies are different, and opinions are different at any given time. So the virtue of ethics is really, it more or less can come to a personal level. So let us give an example where Ogola gave us the example of if we try to, let's say, to enforce certain things at the levels of ICT for the sake of virtue, and let us say to ensure that everyone does their work, we block, let's say, social media sites during work hours. But we know that there are people who will go back doors, who know how to break through firewalls and anything possible just to do what is wrong, or they will do whatever it takes not to do work. Yeah, even if you try to instill these moral values, or you try to enforce these things. So, then he said, also virtue ethics lacks clarity in resolving moral conflicts. So there are certain things where you have moral conflicts. And an example I can give you is, look at those ICT moral issues that I pointed out, and try to examine if virtue ethics, or you can even use this as one of the things that you can argue on, where virtue ethics may not be practical in resolving things which have moral conflicts. So also the virtue ethics is self-centered, or rather it's focused on an individual, yeah? The agent, the person who is carrying out the action himself or herself. So it becomes quite difficult when you are dealing with moral situations which involve a community or several people. Okay, and you can go on with the list, and it may help you discuss further with the assignment that I gave you. Do you have any questions so far? It's actually, we've come to the end of virtue ethics, on introducing us to virtue ethics. Yes, Francis.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I've listened to you concerning the virtuous approach or the theory, but And I've also heard about the utilitarian and deontology theories. So
Yes.
I just want to know from you, which one really, as far as IT and IS is concerned, should be considered as, should I say, the bedrock, or one which we should so much lean to when you're making decisions? Because at the end of the day, we are IT guys or IS professionals who either deal with systems or products that were developed with certain approaches in mind. For example, social media, you talk about systems and everything. So I just wanted your opinion in this whole entire, approach of the three, because some of them have practicality issues, while others lack a one-size-fits-it-all. So I just wanted your opinion as guidance.
Okay. Is there anyone with an opinion to what Francis is asking? Would somebody have an idea on how to answer Francis? If we go back to ethics itself, what is ethics? Why are we learning ethics? We are basically saying we want to make a good decision in whatever we're doing in our professional lives. The reason why we're studying ethics is we want to make a good decision at any given time, the best possible decision at any given time. Now, what does the module of ethics do? It hands you tools which can help you make a decision. Now, the thing, Francis, we need to understand is that at any given time in our professional lives, you will be faced with a moral dilemma. At any given time, for whatever reason, you will be faced with a moral dilemma. Now, take an example. Look at all the current ethical issues that we're facing in 2023. And each of them poses a moral dilemma where you have to make a decision. Maybe if you place yourself as an ICT profession, what ethical decision should I make? So now, Francis, I think the last time we met, this same question was posed. There is no point, Francis, where I can tell you, this is the ethical theory that will guide you as an ICT profession. All of them will guide you, depending on the moral dilemma you will be faced with. Okay? Depending on the moral dilemma you may be faced with at any given time. There are situations where you will have to pick the majority. Right? What will provide the greatest pleasure for the biggest number. Okay? Now, take an example, Francis. There are some of you who have said that in some of your companies, you block certain social media sites within working hours so that you can ensure people focus on their work. Now, Francis, come to a university setting, which is a research institution. For you to start saying you're blocking YouTube, you're actually stopping the process of teaching and learning. Francis, do you see that? Do you see the different contexts?
Yeah, I'm getting it. I'm getting it.
That's different context. Now, in one situation, it was blocked for the sake of ensuring that people carry out their duties. In another context, which is for research, research, teaching, and learning, you can't make a mistake of blocking YouTube because YouTube is a teaching and learning tool. Okay? There are other places where they will say block pornography. In others, they will say it's actually part and parcel of the work. For example, we were, when I was head ICT, that was one time it was a dilemma when we said, okay, we can block, but what if somebody is doing research on pornography? What do you do? It's a research institution. what do you do? So the different theories, Francis, are not for an ICT profession. It depends on what the moral dilemma is. So there's no such, with ethics, there's no such thing as saying this theory is best for ICT people. No, it depends on the moral dilemma that comes up. And moral dilemmas vary and they are dynamic and they change. So what we are giving you as ICT professions are the tools to make the decisions, to make the right decision at the right time. Lamek, you have a question or comment?
No, I'm just going to give an example of a certain organization whereby an IT manager lost a job because the complaints in the customer survey, the complaints were that he did not have public management, people management skills. That he used to be rude to the clients. That's what they said in the survey, and he told everybody knew some of the basic things like I've lost my document. He used to kind of like get annoyed whenever something small, someone told him something, or he expected bigger things for people who have done a lot of IT. So they got a lot of complaints. He lost a job. So when we asked why did they bring that, this was the boss they were interviewing, he said, why did you bring Fred on board and you left out David out? Because the guy was called them. Then he said, no, when you brought David is a people management person. Yes, he's an IT person. He's a down-to-earth person. He has this code of conduct in him. So he respects people of all ages. Even during management period, there's a way he used to dress, and the other guy, because he was IT, used to come in jeans. Okay, there's certain code of conduct he had, and it wasn't representing. Sometimes they used to have stakeholders, and they expected him to say certain things in a certain way, and he didn't bring. So he lacked that bit of the ethical code of conduct in public. That's why he was got rid of. When they brought in another man, he had everything. It was a total package. Yes, you can be IT, but there's also public management. How are you going to manage people? How are you going to listen to them? How are you going to appraise people? You need such skills like that. I submit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lamek. That's a very good example where virtue ethics comes into play. Somebody picks up certain good habits which later on become virtue. How you speak to people with kindness, with respect. That's virtue ethics coming in, but in an IT perspective. Geoffrey, you have a question or comment? Then we shall come to Francis. Geoffrey, you have a question or comment? Hello? Okay, maybe he's maybe a bit distracted.
Yes, doctor, I have a comment, doctor.
Yes, please.
Yes, doctor. I want to give an example of a certain university in Uganda. I don't know whether you hear. No?
Sorry, Clovis, can you mute?
Can you hear me, doctor?
Yes, I can hear you, but there was just interruption from Clovis, but I can hear you now.
Yes. I just wanted to give an example on the same. There is a certain university here in Uganda. Remember, every semester, Senate has to sit, then they agree on releasing the marks. So they used to agree, of course, release marks, then time for graduation reached. And of course, Senate had also to sit again. And maybe they pass out, maybe the graduates. So here they found out that the registry's office or the registrar's report, almost 70% students had first class. Almost 60. Then another like 20 second class. So those who failed were very few. And of course, students had already printed out their results. Parents had already seen results, and the university follows. National Council of Higher Learning grading. So CGPA was high for everyone almost. So they decided to go back into the system. They had decided to go back into the system, reduce the marks. Maybe they cut the points, but which wasn't okay. So at the end of it all, it was going to cause an alarm. Of course, from the clients, even the university was going to face challenges. So they decided, let them take the shame, and maybe they allow students to graduate. But remember, at the end of it all, they are those students who get first class, they take the best students and give them scholarships.
Yes.
But again, they did not give the students scholarships because there were many. So students, of course, they didn't feel good. And another thing, they had to let all students graduate with their first classes, though they were genuine. So I think ethically, it wasn't good on the side of those students who read their books genuinely and passed genuinely. But of course, because of the common good for everyone, they had to decide. So I think this one is relevant to what Lamek was. Is it Lamek, the guy who has just presented?
Yes, please. Thank
I
you.
think it is totally relevant, Doctor.
Thank you so much. Francis, you have a question or comment?
Doctor, for me, I just wanted to go back. You gave us an ethics framework at the beginning. So
Yes.
is that framework a summary or an average of the 3 theories, or is the framework you'd want us to follow using, because you have said you give us the tools to follow as professionals. So is that framework one of the tools, or I don't know. I just wanted to make a clarification concerning the framework.
The framework, I think we shall discuss that one later, especially when we come to the ICT side. We'll discuss that one later to make it a bit more practical, just so that we don't get confused. Eddie, you have a question or comment?
Yes, Doctor. Actually, I've been following what everyone has been saying, and I sense some kind of confusion. When you started very well, discussing this issue of vacuum and habits and what have you. But again, based on the examples people have been putting up, things like banning, restricting sites and what have you, I don't see that as a vacuum, personally. In my opinion, actually what I've picked from the time you started this lecture, a vacuum is something like a personal, an individual initiative, right?
Yes.
I just wake up one day and say from today, I'm going to be having this and this away. But if you say from today, people are not going to be accessing this from this time to this time, then that becomes a policy. It's not a vacuum. I don't know what you have. I don't know what you have to say about that, but to me, I don't think that anything enforced on somebody is not a vacuum.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Eddie, you're right. But I think that the reasoning behind that is that you're trying to help certain colleague, or an organization or corporation is trying to how should I say, direct or enforce certain habits to develop in their staff. For example, doing your work at the right time without any distractions, sort of like helping them along, but let's say with a policy. But that is where somebody is trying to use that theory sort of like to enforce, but not necessarily. But of course, as we point out, the criticisms of virtue ethics is that they are self-centered. It's really dependent on the individual themselves coming out. But however, again, Eddie, we also wanted to point out, for example, the example that that Lamek gave of an ICT person who lost his job because he lacked certain virtues, professional virtues, should I say, people skills, how to talk to people. That was an individual who failed to pick them up and maybe failed to see this was part and parcel of intellectual virtue, that even though you're an ICT person, you must learn how to speak to people. You must have those interpersonal skills. However, again, also, Eddie, I also want to point out that also virtue ethics does influence certain things. For example, if you have a code of conduct, let's say in your workplace, which says on how you should address anybody within your organization. Let me give you an example, Eddie. I worked for an internet service provider. In one of my very earlier jobs when I just graduated some years, many years back. And one of the things that everyone was taught, even the ICT people, was how to talk to clients. Okay? That element of politeness, professionalism. And you would carry it out, you do it constantly, you'd have constant trainings, and throughout the day, you'd repeat certain words, and it became part and parcel of you, simply out of those trainings that you did. It just simply became part and parcel of you. And these were also ICT people, the techies, the ones you'd refer to as the techies in quotes. This became just part and parcel. And the one just there to set up internet accounts or fix internet accounts, but also how they were talking to people. This also becomes a virtue in itself. Yeah, it becomes an intellectual virtue. It isn't necessarily a moral virtue, but an intellectual virtue in itself. The other things I pointed out, Lamek, were things like you developing professionally as an individual. Your IT skills, honing your IT skills better, getting certification in something, that is also part of the virtue ethics. Yeah. Or let us say, when you organize trainings within your department to get better, that's also part of the virtue ethics. To get better or better skilled at something, that's intellectual virtue. So that is where you see it coming into play. I don't know if Eddie makes sense.
Doctor, what you're saying makes sense.
Okay.
But my point is,
yes.
My point is,
yes.
like if you could go back to the definition of vacuum, the way you defined it, I didn't see anything like it being taught to somebody. It is a you just motivate yourself and say, from today I'm going to do this, and then you pick it up.
Maybe if you go back to intellectual virtue, it is taught. If you can access the slides on Moodle, intellectual virtue is taught. There we have two kinds of virtue. We have intellectual virtue and moral virtue. They're all part of virtue ethics. So that's why I gave examples like a mathematician, someone becoming excellent at mathematics. That's a virtue. Or somebody now in the IT field, somebody becoming excellent at Linux administration. Or any new, or let's say at IA, artificial intelligence coding and program, whatever it is, someone becoming excellent, that's a virtue. It's an intellectual virtue, different from moral virtue. They are all part of virtue ethics. If I can just...
I think Eddie can also get the example of MTN when they had a mobile money fraud.
Yes.
And when the investigation was done, it was the IT team which were involved, and actually they were arrested and right now in Rosita. So from what happened there, we instilled a new law that they must sign a code of conduct and a confidentiality of our days, the way they called it, data
Yes.
protection, the virtue which was instilled in all IT people, because they're right now in New Zealand.
Yes, thank you, Lamek. So Eddie, virtue, we see that this virtue is virtue which can be taught. Then there is the moral virtue. They are all part of the theory of the ethical theory of virtue.
Doctor.
It's all part and parcel.
Hello, doctor.
Yes, please, Eddie.
Don't you think that those people Lamek is referring to that you are taken to New Zealand, they just instilled fear into those that remained?
I think number one, when you sign a code of conduct, you are agreeing to something. For most people, when they join a company, you sign, for example, there are things like the human.
Those funny agreements.
Yeah, there are different agreements that are signed, and codes of conduct are part of them. And even UICT, your ICT department also develops a policy, and you make people sign them. And on signing them, you ICT are obliged to train users. Many times people may go against the code of conduct because they may not be aware, or they may not have been properly trained or educated or informed on something. So there's a thing, something like privacy, data privacy. Someone may not be aware that, for example, I'm not allowed to share maybe a student's results. I may sit here and mark, and then I'm seated with my sibling, I say, oh, look at this student, what he wrote, and I'm not aware that that is unethical. Yeah, and I may break it. So even first of all, informing someone that this habit is, this act is not allowed within our organization. So even making them sign is not a threat, because first of all, when you're taking up a job, you're saying either I will adhere to the code of conduct or I will not. It's not necessarily a thought, it's an agreement, a mutual agreement between two parties or more. So it's not necessarily a threat, but it's also an agreement, because you say, if I say I'm not willing to keep secrets, and I say I won't stay with this company, I'll go away. So in one way it could be a threat, but in another way it's not necessarily a threat. It could be an agreement. For me, I would argue in that way.
Yeah.
It's just my but it's with ethics, Eddie, there's no right or wrong answer. Anyone can argue anyway. But Eddie, one of the things that is clear, I think if I can just go back a few slides. Let me see. We have intellectual virtue which can be taught. And if you see that.
Yes.
Yeah. And then moral virtue, which is acquired through excellent habits. So it can be taught. Now, for example, even teaching someone that, for example, how you speak to people when you're online, giving trainings on that, on etiquette. That's virtue. And some of those things someone may not know. This is how I should communicate, and you teach them. Or even how you should talk to your fellow colleagues. It all comes into play in IT. Do we have any other question or comment?
Francis.
I think we are okay. Let me see if there's no, there are no other questions. So if we are okay, we can then end this lecture and you can go. Remember, we are looking at our assignment in groups. Okay, we remember that? If you could kindly pass on to me your groups so I input them in Moodle. Now use all three ethical theories to tackle the different ethical dilemmas that we are now facing. in 2023. If you could do that, use the 3 ethical theories, because I think now you have all of them in your groups. And remember, they are all practical. If you look at them now from today's lecture, you realize they're all practical in the IT field. None is outside our field. Is that okay?
Yes, doctor.
It's okay, doctor. Doctor, we have a question.
Yes, please.
Yes, doctor, we are assigned, this one is not relevant to what we are studying now, but we are assigned supervisors.
Yes.
And the good bit of it that you are my supervisor, but I've been sending my my work to you on your mail. You have never replied, and you asked for a concept paper. But now we have seen that.
Many
Sorry.
apologies, Geoffrey. One thing, okay, I'm going to try. One of the things I have to tell you is that we're trying to see that the finalists can graduate. So they created a research committee, which we have every Sunday. There are 6 students who present to that research committee. And being that I'm the only PhD lecturer that I've accepted, I'm kind of like the focal point. So for some time now, I've been busy with that. But Geoffrey, I promise you that I'm going to look at your concept paper come Tuesday.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome.
Doctor.
Okay.